So as we dive into 2552, the starting point for the sort of batch of battles at the end of the war is the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV, so I figured today we could set the stage for that engagement so we could talk about it later this week. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So as I mentioned, many of the battles we're all familiar with at the end of the Human Covenant War, battles like the Battle of Reach, or the Battle of Earth, or the battles of the Halo installations, all kind of happened because of the events that took place during the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV. So I figured today it would be a great opportunity to put in context Sigma Octanus IV and its importance or lack thereof. So Sigma Octanus IV is one of the worlds in humanity's inner colonies. Closer to Earth, it's around the same distance from Earth as Reach, which should put in perspective how close the Covenant are getting to the core of human civilization, how apparent it is to the human government and the human population that the war is quickly coming to an end with their defeat. Sigma Octanus itself, specifically Sigma Octanus IV, was colonized in 2371 in one of the early waves of human colonization into the stars. On Sigma Octanus would be several large population centers, making it a populated world, but not quite as populous as somewhere like Reach, for example, which is a major human hub of commerce, technology, and military infrastructure. By contrast, Sigma Octanus is a relatively small world with some urban development, mostly serving the population of the world itself, with minimal exports. That being said, Sigma Octanus would play a major historical role during the Human Covenant War. It would be the site of one of the most legendary naval maneuvers of the entire war, the Keys Loop, and the battle there would ultimately set the stage for the entire remainder of the conflict, being centered around Earth and the Halo rings as opposed to constant human colonies being destroyed one after another. It would line up the players to take part in the much larger and much more consequential Battle of Reach, and it would lead the Covenant to the Halo rings. So there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of importance sort of held up in this relatively insignificant world. And with that insignificance in mind, human military forces weren't quite as concentrated on that world, with a relatively small naval detachment in orbit, no large orbital defensive infrastructure like MAC cannons, which we see over Earth and Reach, and a small contingent of UNSC ground forces on the planet, as well as a few listening stations, which were pretty standard across UNSC space, to listen for incoming slipspace signatures, which would play an important role in the battle to come. It's worth noting that in that naval fleet, by the way, guarding the planet of Sigma Octanus IV is the UNSC destroyer, the Iroquois, which would be under the command of Captain Keyes. And yes, I'm talking about that Captain Keyes, by the way, the Captain Keyes that was present during the Battle of Installation 04. Like many human colonies, Sigma Octanus IV was relatively Earth-like, with a mixed and diverse set of biomes, dotted by large human settlements that were more planned than cities here on Earth, where they had thousands of years to develop. On these colonies, they were sort of planned from the beginning. So you get places like New Alexandria on Reach that are much more modular, if you will. However, there's one fairly large thing on Sigma Octanus IV that leads to the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV and sort of draws the Covenant to that world, and it's a massive Forerunner artifact. The Covenant found Sigma Octanus IV because they were tracking this artifact and attempting to hunt it down and capture it, which led to the Covenant invasion of the world and would ultimately get the ball rolling on the rest of the war. So there is something of significance there, albeit it's not quite as well known to the humans as it is to the Covenant, and it would become more apparent in hindsight how significant the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV was. Still, this relatively insignificant world would lay the groundwork for the rest of the war, and the battle that's going to take place there, which we'll discuss later this week, is significant. All things considered, Sigma Octanus IV is a relatively insignificant and unremarkable world that houses a few notable artifacts, but would ultimately become the battleground for one of the most significant battles of the Human Covenant War when looking back on it in hindsight. And later this week, on July 17th, we'll be looking at the date of the battle when Covenant forces first arrived over Sigma Octanus IV. And later this week, we'll be discussing it in battle analysis, so we can look forward to talking more about the sort of timeline of events of that battle during that video. But to understand why the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV was such a big shift from what was to what will be, you have to understand where we're coming from and what the state of the galaxy is at that point. So if you'd like to learn about the state of the human-controlled segment of the galaxy at this point in 2552, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments if you know the story of the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV, if you think it's really as significant as I'm giving it credit for, or am I blowing it a little bit out of proportion? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Halo, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.